Aloha is it's an important word. It's both a term, it is a noun, it is a thing, it's an essence. It's a very complex word. Hawaii it's a small place. We are also the most isolated landmass in the world. And what transpired was a requirement for people to get along and live in reasonable harmony. Kindness in no way, shape, or form connotates weakness. In fact, kindness, I think, creates strength and unity and power for an organization.
Could you really put together the word high performing and culture, good, kind culture together? Is there even a place for aloha in the workplace? Can we win here?
I'll twist that a little bit and say, I think that is in fact the pathway to performance and outcome and performance.
Before we dive in, I want to ask you something. We are just beginning, and our just cause, the reason we make this show is to make every corner of the world we can reach a little more inspiring, a little more human, a little more empathetic. People who watch this show tell us it is making a difference in how they lead, how they parent, how they show up every single day, and that means everything to us. But we are just building our viewership, and we want to go as far as our passion can reach. So if you believe in what we are building, hit subscribe right now. It's completely free. And don't stop there. Share this with someone you love and ask them to subscribe too. Because every person who joins this community is one more life we get to reach. We promise you, we will always do our best. Now let's get in today's episode. I think you're going to really love this.
Awesome day to everyone. Welcome to the Cherry Africa Podcast. And my guest today is a very special guest. He has been for 16 long and productive years been the chairman and CEO of one of America's most trusted brands in banking. And we are here to try and understand the culture he has built for his company, a culture built on aloha, which is not just a greeting, not just a feature, but a competitive advantage of the culture of any company. We are very, very pleased to welcome Peter Ho, and who was the chairman of the Bank of Hawaii for 15 years, have been named as America's most trusted bank. Peter, welcome to my podcast, and thank you so much for sharing this space with us.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Hey, Peter, you've been retired for over a month. And first and foremost, thank you for joining us here. And you are a free man now. I want to ask, what is the dominant emotion of a retired, achiever?
It's a funny thing. I will tell you. So I wear this device, and the good thing is, and the terrible thing about this device is, it tells me everything that's happening in my body. And I'll tell you, a funny thing happened when I retired. And it's just over a month ago now. My resting heart rate actually dropped about 10 beats per minute from prior to retirement. So there's definitely something physiologically happening, which is a good thing. And as much as I loved working at the bank and leading such an incredible institution and upwards of 2,000 individuals, it did have with it its element of stress. And so as much as I love everyone at Bank of Hawaii, as much as I love the institution, it has been nice to kind of sit back and just relax a little bit, at least for the last month.
I also have that device. I wear this device, and I've been teaching my body to try and bring down my resting heart rate. So I think I also need to retire very soon in order for me to have that
You're too
permanently.
young. You're too young.
Well, thank you very much for that piece of wisdom. I have read, as part of the Hawaiian, this huna, right? This hidden knowledge, this secret. There's a word there that I learned. It's called kala, which is freedom. And I read about freedom as described by the Hawaiians, and it is that everyone is free, that we are free to be our highest version. We are free to do whatever we want. I mean, would it take a retirement to actually feel this free, or is there really a place for freedom in the workplace, Peter?
That's a good question, and I think that The best organizations allow people to be themselves, to have the freedom to really excel and do their best work as themselves. I think sometimes the challenge becomes self-expectation, and sometimes in the effort to do better or to not disappoint others, that comes with its own set of constraints and expectations, self expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the things we try very hard to do at Bank of Hawaii is make people feel comfortable, make people feel as though their contributions matter. And I think that the net result of that is I think people do feel safe and comfortable in our culture. But I think the challenge is when you have a culture and an organization of people who are always trying to do better and better and better. Sometimes it's their own self-expectations that creates that stress and gets that resting heart rate up, if you will.
Right. There's really that expectation pressure, right? And
Right.
it's something very interesting what you're saying here is it's not just the pressure from the expectation of the people around you, the stakeholders, but also for yourself. And sometimes we become too hard on ourselves, right?
Hmm.
So there's
Hmm.
one hidden secret here. The knowledge here that you're sharing with us is to actually just be kind to ourselves, right? Not to put too much expectation, and that we are free to really show up in our best versions. It's really just
Absolutely.
liberating to know we have that freedom in the workplace. And so that's where I wanted to ask you a question about, Peter. We talk about culture. We've been talking about culture of happiness or culture of kindness. There's this principle in Hawaii called Aloha, right? And I believe it is not just a greeting. It's not just a hello or a goodbye. It's something deeper than that. So tell me more about Aloha. And my next question is there even a place for Aloha in the workplace?
Well, so aloha is it's an important word, and aloha is it's both a term, it is a noun, it is a thing, it's an essence. It's a very complex word. And so basically, I'll get into aloha, but I think it's important to start with what is Hawaii and the essence of Hawaii and the uniqueness of the place that I think gives rise to what we call the aloha spirit. Okay. And Hawaii is a very special place. I think it's one of the most recognized locations in the world. And Hawaii it's a small place. Our population is only 1.4 million people, but we are also the most isolated landmass in the world. We're 2,500 miles from the next closest landmass, whether you go east or west or north or south. So we're isolated, and we're unique in that the islands were founded, if you will, by our host culture, the Hawaiians, which came actually from Polynesia. And then over time, other cultures migrated to the islands. So first it was the Caucasians from the northeastern part of the United States back in the 1800s. They established a plantation economy, which required laborers. And so we brought in the Chinese, or they brought in the Chinese from China, Japanese after that, Filipinos, Koreans, Portuguese horsemen to help manage the laborers. And so you had a very small place with a number of different cultures. And what transpired was a requirement for people to get along and live in reasonable harmony. So I think getting back to the question of aloha is aloha really is the byproduct of what happens when you bring so many different cultures into a small locale, into kind of a singular economy. And what you end up with is a system where people have to learn to get along in order to survive, in order to prosper, in order to engage in their daily routine. And so along with aloha comes a set of values, a set of ways, a set of how you think about other people, a set about how you think about yourself, as we talked about earlier. That's very important and very intentional. That's really when I think more clinically about what does aloha mean. It really kind of stems from the practical outcome of many different types of people operating in a very small, confined place.
It's the first time I'm hearing this, Peter. It's very, very interesting. When you want to, for example, have a culture of aloha or kindness or compassion, however way you say it in your own culture, in particular in the history of Hawaii, you're saying that it was a requirement because you had no choice. It was a forcing mechanism, right? That people needed to
Right.
work together to get along together. And with that came actually, a host of behaviors. Is this something we can do in the workplace? Like require people to be kind, force them to be in one place to work together, hopefully emerged behaviors that are, kinder to people? I mean, is this something that can work? Because, sometimes when you're with people, there are a lot of conflicts and tensions. A lot of leaders would rather be away from people and in their offices.
Well, I believe that my own belief is that the essence of business, of commerce, really is all about people working together towards a common goal. And it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, doesn't matter what kind of industry you're in. The bottom line is that it's not the product, it's not the manufacturing process, it's not the machinery that ultimately determines success or not. It's really the people that work for an organization and the leadership of those people that are working for the organization that comes together to dictate success or not. And so I think that the reality is that that as technical and as dollars and cents and as competitive and performance oriented as business practice tends to be, the reality is the true performance of our organization is going to be defined by how people feel about working in and for that organization, right? And that's a very, very important factor. And in my experience, in the 32 years that I was at Bank of Hawaii and the 16 years that I was running Bank of Hawaii as a CEO, that reality came back over and over to me as really the defining element of success or not. And so, the question, your question is, can a culture or an organization be focused on kindness, be focused on supporting each other and being kind to each other and really looking out for each other? I would flip that on its head a little bit, Coach, and say that that's actually the requirement of an organization to be successful. And the idea, and I think people sometimes get the term kindness mistaken for weakness. And kindness in no way, shape, or form connotates weakness. In fact, kindness, I think, creates strength and unity and power for an organization.
That's very interesting. Like, let's try and bring it down to the level of execution, right? Because these are all beautiful words, right, that you would probably want to hear in a culture playbook, right? But when we
Mhm.
talk about kindness and aloha, and on a Monday morning, have people underperforming and complacent. I mean, how do you mix this? I mean, when you talk of, could you really put together the word high performing and culture, good, kind culture together? Can we win here?
I'll begin by saying I think that the question is it possible to achieve that? And I'll twist that a little bit and say I think that is in fact the pathway to performance and outcome and performance.
Mhm.
And I say that because I think that if you accept that people are the essential element to a business, and then therefore the essential element to the success and or failure of that business, then you really need to focus in on what motivates people, right? And basically, from my experience or my belief, is that people don't work for an organization. They don't work for a brand. They don't, they of course work for a paycheck, of course. But there's something, they can get a paycheck lots of different places. Talented people can. And so I think ultimately what people work for is each other. They work to, please and impress a leader. And I think what really you need to do to be successful is to get the most talented, effective people that you can onto your team. And the question is, how do you attract those people? How do you retain those people? How do you motivate those people? And I believe it really runs down the pathway of allowing people to understand that you have their interest at heart and you want what is best for them. And they therefore understand that. And the people that they work with or the people that work for them, like they take that same approach. And if you're in the habit of doing that, then that begins to transcend from the work relationship with another individual, whether it be a superior or a subordinate or a coworker, right? That transitions to a grouping of people. And if you're a really good organization, that transcends into the culture of the organization. And so I believe, this idea that, it's really the technology or it's the secret sauce or it's the marketing prowess or the distribution capability of anything that is the essence of success for a company. That's not really the truth. The truth is it's the quality of people that work for that company, that institution, that will define success or failure. And then therefore, it's how those individuals feel about working for that organization that will determine success or failure.
There's a sentence there that you mentioned that's worth repeating, and you said that people work for each other, not with each other, right? I mean, does Aloha fire people? Does Aloha scold, underperformers? Are there certain do's and don'ts when we manage and lead people when it comes to people who are probably freeloading or underperforming or are not as
Yeah.
motivated as they should be?
I don't think that the issue is whether or not the system of management doesn't help people understand how to do a better job. I don't think that the situation is such that, we can never determine when someone is just not a good fit for our organization, right? I mean, those things happen. This is a reality, right? I think the important thing, however, is that everybody understands that there is an expectation of performance. We all agree that in order for us to do what we want to do, we need to be performing at a certain level. We do understand that we need to help coach people into better performance. No question about that. We all understand that sometimes on the team, there are individuals that just after repeated experience and experience and experience just are not likely to be long-term members or participants of that team. Okay, I think that's a reality of any organization. The question is how you go about applying those principles. And I think you can have your cake and eat it too, if you will. I think that you can manage to a high level, you can manage to a high expectation, but you can do it in a way that is supportive of people. You can do it in a way that allows people to maintain their dignity and the ability for them to conclude themselves that maybe this isn't the right place for me. Or maybe I really need to start focusing more and spending more time on what I'm doing because my mind's really not into it. And with proper coaching, I think you can get there. And again, I don't think it has to be punitive. I don't think it has to be heavy-handed. I think you can get there with kindness still and still drive performance. And I think, I think people would very easily identify Bank of Hawaii as a performance-oriented organization for sure. But at the same time, we did spend a lot of time and effort to ensure that we were doing things the right way.
I think it's very good, and I could think of a metaphor here when we talk about performance, right? And a lot of times when we talk about making sure that we manage our tasks well, we think about the machines, we think about all of the support things, and we have to upgrade them and make sure that they work at a fantastic level. We also need to make sure that as we think of high performance, we have to make sure we invest in people and make sure they work at a fantastic level. So it actually is not opposing. It should be part of the strategy, the process. I like what you're saying there, but Peter, hang on for a second. I just really wanted to let you know that we have people in the audience here and that they might be interested to ask questions because we are really talking about really hot topics here. We have Maru Crisologo. She is a vice president of a food and manufacturing company called Century Pacific. Noreen Kaiko, BPI vice president. Maria Elena Fajardo, who is a vice president of HR of Arthaland, a real estate company. We have who else do we have here? Jagat Wikmarasinghe. Jagat, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. Executive Director for Alliance Producers Co-op.
Yeah.
And Karine from Bank of Hawaii. Karine Trevino, who is a VP and Wealth Advisor from the Bank of Hawaii. So anyone else we're missing, just let us know if we are missing here. And feel free to ask questions in the chat or feel free to actually open your cameras and ask questions if we have some questions here. Thank you so much for joining us.
I see Agatha Viernes too from Bank of Hawaii.
Hey there. Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you for
How are
having me.
you?
Doing great,
Hello.
Peter.
Thank you
Aloha.
for joining us. If you have any question, any insight, or anything you wanted to add value or build, I think we are here to try and expand the wisdom in this room. We call it manao, right? Is that how you say it in Hawaiian? Wisdom.
Manao.
Manao, wisdom, right? So
Manao. We would pronounce all the vowels. Manao.
pronounce all the
Manao.
vowels. Okay, manao. Noreen also just came. She is vice president from another bank, Peter, Bank of the Philippine Islands. So we want to talk about that. Maybe if there are questions here. Just like BPI, right? Being a local bank, Bank of Hawaii is a local bank, and in Hawaii, you have been named as for 15 years, the most trusted American bank, right? And you have not allowed your bank to be overtaken by any international brands. In fact, there are no international banks in Hawaii. I really want to understand this. Is it because of culture? Is it, understanding of culture? I mean, what is the reason you're dominant and you're the only one?
Yeah, so we have 34% market share in Hawaii. Bank of Hawaii does. And that's a very large market share by any account in any marketplace. So very unique. And you're right. It's Hawaii is the only state in the United States, so only state in the country that isn't dominated by the large, what I call the mega banks. So Bank of America or Chase or JP Morgan or Wells Fargo or Citibank, you know all of these banks. And so we are unusual, and the question is why. And I come back to I guess to begin with, Hawaii is a unique place. I think there definitely is an element of that going on here. We do we do appreciate our culture. We do try to do things within the family, if you will. I think that's very much a part of the culture of the islands. But the other thing that I would say is that I think that the team should take some credit for what I think has been a very sound strategy, which basically is twofold. And the way we think and the way we've thought about it is, we need to be two things in order to be successful. We have to be a world-class financial institution, because you wouldn't want to provide a service, a financial service in our case, to your customer if they could get a much better experience with Chase Bank or Wells Fargo Bank. And that's just not a recipe for success. So you have to have a great product to begin with. But if you have a product that is worthwhile, is it can compete with anybody in the marketplace, then the differentiating factor is the brand and the brand feel and how people feel and what their loyalties are when they are a Bank of Hawaii customer, right? So we have to bring our sensibility and our understanding of this unique marketplace and this unique culture to bear and hopefully do that successfully. Hopefully leverage our 128-year history here in the islands and all the knowledge, all the mana'o, as you described, that comes along with that, and match that to capability and expertise and product expertise. And if we could do that, our belief has always been that there's no one that can match us because the large mainland providers, they've got capability, but they don't understand the Hawaii marketplace. Some of our local competitors, they may understand the Hawaii marketplace, but they don't have quite the capability of a world-class institution. So it's really bringing together that a world-class notion together with, what it takes to be successful in this particular culture, in this particular market. That gives us a uniqueness that is different from any other financial institution in the world. And I always would tell people, we don't need to be the best bank in the world. We need to be the best bank for this marketplace. And what is the best bank for this marketplace is likely to be very different than what other marketplaces require.
I think that's very interesting what you're saying, right? To really serve and understand your market. When you talk about the dominant players, the mainland banks, right? What is it specifically? I mean, bringing it down to examples, what is it specifically that they are missing about the culture that's not allowing them to even, play in the market of Hawaii?
I think it has to do, call it the soccer syndrome. Okay. And you have to realize that when you are dealing with clients, customers, whether they're consumers or large corporate customers, or you're dealing with your staff, Hawaii is such a small place that I call it the soccer phenomena, because always remember that how you deal with that customer uh, is going to be such that you're going to see that customer probably on the soccer field, your kid's soccer game on Saturday. I mean, that's how small Hawaii is, right? And so I think that when we deal with people, our relationships with people, whether they're employees or teammates, or whether they're customers, I think we try to take a long view to that because we realize we all live in this community together, and we have to realize that we're going to be together for the long term. So relationship is a really important term for our institution, and how you build and develop that relationship has to be thought of over the long term, or the reality that it's not transactional. It's not, what is the best thing for that moment. It's what's the best thing for that moment, of course. But how is this going to transpire over days and months and years? Because that's kind of the way this place operates.
It seems something, the concept of spirit, right? That we are in different relational fields. And you mentioned something that it combines the work, the people that you meet on Sundays, they are the same people. So who you are, what you are as a brand, I guess at work should also be who you are and what you are as a brand in your personal lives. The
Yeah,
concept of community is just so strong and gripping, and I like that.
yeah.
Yeah, if there are any questions from our audience, feel free to raise your hand and ask questions. So I think, what Peter is sharing here is very interesting, something we could use and apply in our own workplaces. You mentioned something about culture. I am quite interested because Aloha is such a dominant concept, at least for us, right? Non-Hawaiians. But I've also heard a concept which is also equally as dominant. It's the word Ohana, right? First heard it from Lilo and Stitch, right? Stitch is an alien experiment meant to destroy, but eventually learned loyalty and love and belonging from Lilo. I wanted to ask, uh, family, for example, the concept of no one is left behind in a workplace when you have the fast and the big performers, right? The rock star performers. And you also have in your team the slow ones, right? Who need time and who need, explanation and who need more motivation. You don't leave them behind. How do you make them run faster?
I think that's a good question, and that really is the essence of leadership. I mean, leadership is all about how do you take a team of people and understand that there are differences in this grouping of people. And some people you're not going to have to explain anything. You're not going to have to motivate at all. In fact, these people probably are better than you at what they're doing, right? And you have to celebrate that and allow them to do their thing and work really hard to stay out of their way, right? And then at the same time, there are those that need more support and need more substance and need more um, just energy, if you will, right? And you have to be willing to apply how you manage that sector differently than how you manage other sectors of your organization. And so, yeah, I think that there's tremendous pressure on leadership to perform. I'm always very quick to tell people, because within any high performing organization, there are always going to be parts of the organization that aren't performing as well, right? And when I sit down with the senior executive team and ask, what's going on here, what I'm usually quick to say is, I've been doing this for over 30 years. And anytime I step into an area that is underperforming, I have never, ever come away saying, the rank and file of this institution is not getting the job done, but leadership is amazing, right? It's always the other way around. I mean, I think kind of the masses of any organization want to do the right thing. They want to get the job done. They want to be proud of what they're doing. It's usually leadership, if you're in a dysfunctional situation, that's not getting it done right. And again, that puts tremendous pressure on leadership to perform, to get it done right, to understand, what is the magic that needs to happen in this area for us to get things back on the right track. And that's challenging.
You're saying if leadership performs well, if it's functional right, that it will be so much easier for the rank and file to perform their best too. That they really are just, following and matching the energy of their leaders. Is that what you're saying?
I would be even stronger than that. If leadership's doing a great job, I guarantee you that that organization, that part of the organization, is going to be doing just great.
Wow,
I think that correlation is that tight.
I like what you're saying, and I hope a lot of leaders will hear that, right? Just do your job well, work well together, be a best team, and the rest will just follow.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, as a leader, that is your job. Your
Right.
job is your job is 150% to get your team to perform well, whatever that takes, right? And I can tell you what it takes. It takes great leadership.
Okay, so the job is to make sure that your team performs 150%. It is the leaders, not just privilege, but also responsibility.
Yes. Yeah, your job, exactly. Like when you get that big title, that's not the end of your job. That's just the beginning.
Right. Maru here, who's vice president of Century Pacific Food, I think she has a question. Maru, you have a question? You wanna, open your
Yes,
mic?
yes. So I'd like to build on the conversation about your job as a leader and making sure that your vision is transcends through like the entire team and the organization, right? So I think in that respect, the middle management layer is very important. Like it's the glue that connects um, the the vision and the actual experiences of the employees. So my question, I have two questions regarding like that middle management level. Um, Number one is how can you ensure that the middle managers are emotionally healthy and ready to lead and like create space for others so that they can bring in like stability and also performance um within their own teams. And then my second question is um how can you make sure that like that the values that you talk about like in the boardroom, how can you make sure that it transcends, like the middle managers are able to make it flow through
Mhm.
actual employee experiences? Yeah.
Yeah, those are those are very good questions. I have two answers for you. One is that especially for middle managers, when you're early career, really you're asked usually to do perform a task, right? And oftentimes they're technical tasks. You build up a technical skill set, and you rise through the organization based on how well you can perform those tasks, right? And then you get into middle management, and you've gotten a nice raise, you've gotten a promotion, a new title, and they say, okay, now go do better. And by the way, you've got 30 people reporting to you now, right? And sometimes what happens is that person who's just been promoted tries to do better because he's been told or she's been told to do better, right? But they try to do it with their old pattern of performance, right? Which is mastery of a task, right? And the reality is, as you move up the organization, your job becomes much more about being a manager, becomes much more about being a leader, right? And so the skills that you bring to bear in doing that, oftentimes you have had no training at all in how to lead people, how to connect with people, how to manage people, how to diffuse situations, how to have difficult conversations, right? All the things that we've been talking about. So I'd begin with that, right? And we're all, I think every organization is probably guilty of not spending enough time really coaching and helping and training younger leaders, mid-level leaders to become exactly that, better leaders. Leadership is really not a terribly technical, it's not a hard skill. It's much more of a soft set of skills. And I think corporate America, at least, really probably doesn't do as good a job as we need to help in that regard. But the second thing I would say is I think that too much of leadership and management often is about how to do something, right? So the question is, how do you get the outcome from what the board and the CEO wants down through middle management, down through to the assembly line floor, if you will, right? And I think that that has to do with making sure that as much of the organization as possible understands not just how to do something, but why they're doing it, right? And kind of how to do it, but not knowing why you're doing it can feel very uncomfortable, unnatural. What happens if something jumbles the situation and it's a little bit different now? Like, how do you intuitively navigate off of that? Well, if you don't know fundamentally why we're trying to do this, why this makes sense for the organization, you have a very hard time recovering, right? So, we spend a lot of time teaching and telling people how to do something and not nearly as much time showing and helping people understand why we're doing that, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Margo,
That's
thank you
that's
so much
perfect.
for that question.
Yeah,
You may
very good
stay
answer.
if you wanted to expand the conversation. I'm getting two things here. The first thing is what Peter said is that we are all limited by our training, right? So when we promote somebody who's an expert who does so well in the how to a level of management and expect them to learn to lead people at the get-go is something that's probably improbable, right? Because they have not been trained to diffuse
No,
tension or to lead people. What I'm catching here is the responsibility of the manager to make sure you coach, you ensure that they are, using your words, Maru, emotionally healthy, I guess, right? And we just don't expect that. We train it, and we coach in the company. So that's very interesting what you're saying here, Peter. Maru, do you have any comments on that or anything you wanted to ask further?
Um, yes, but I have another question, though I guess it's like on a different topic. Is that okay? Or
sure.
should we
Sure,
like do that?
sure,
Yeah.
sure.
I guess my third question would be like looking at your like leadership journey, what do you think would be like a mistake that that you did? And like what belief about leadership have changed your mind about the most?
Oh, that's a good question. I think in my 32 years with the Bank of Hawaii, and 40 years in the industry, I think quite squarely earlier in my career, I was much more impatient than I probably ought to have been. I don't think I fully appreciated how empathy um, is so important, and not just because um, empathy is a virtue, which it is, but because empathy is an important managerial tool, right? You need to understand where people are coming from, what obstacles stand in front of them. People are different. Everyone's different. Everyone has something to contribute for sure. And the way to unlock that is to have a deeper and better understanding of where they're coming from. And so I think, we can talk the virtuous side of empathy, which is worthwhile, which is we should all be empathetic, of course. But there's a technical aspect to empathy, managerial aspect to empathy that's very important because, like I said, what is the responsibility of leadership is to extract maximum performance, right? And the only way you can do that is if you can understand exactly what is driving or motivating or holding back an individual. So you need to understand where they're coming from. You need to understand that they may have a different timeline than what your base expectation is. And maybe in your impatience to drive your timeline on that individual, you're losing out on someone who potentially is going to be a star performer for you because because your expectation and their capability given their life situation is just different, and so they opt out, they go someplace else, and you very well may have lost out on someone who was really going to move the needle for your organization, right? So I would say I was terribly impatient. I'm still a very impatient person, and I think I always had empathy. I don't think I understood how valuable empathy is, not just as a virtue, but as a tool.
I am also very guilty about that, Peter and Maru, right? When we talk about empathy, and we all know, and we've been said, empathy is such an important leadership competency. But a lot of times we only remember empathy at the end of the day. And we've already lashed the cruel words, right? The hurting words, the hurtful ones. Or we remember that on our retirement, right? And we go back and regret a lot of specific situations when we could have been more empathetic. I am so guilty about that. So if there will be, give us bits of wisdom or manao here, Peter. I mean, at the moment, right, when I needed to perform and I needed to extract the best version of somebody in front of me, and I'm impatient, what should I tell myself so that, I hold back and I become more mindful of the words I want to say? I mean, what is that huna, that hidden knowledge, that
I,
secret?
There are Bank of Hawaii employees on the line, so they know that I'm not good at this. You just do the best you can, and you try to be someone who's very self-aware and someone who's very honest with themselves and accepts and knows that you're not going to do things perfectly or even the right way from time to time. And you try to course correct as quickly as you can, as fulsomely as you can. And I think that's the best you can, because we're all human beings, right?
So
We should expect empathy from those around us as well.
right, correct. Empathy towards us also, right? But it is hard when we try and manage our emotions and our energy. You did mention, for example, in an organization, the rank and file, it's very easy to actually, influence them and inspire them. So it is the higher management that we need to influence. And when we talk about managing our energy as leadership, right? You have
Mhm.
high performers, you have mid performers, you have underperformers. A lot of times we give energy, we motivate the high performers, right? Because we could extract more from them, and they get tired, and they sometimes feel it's unfair, right, to always expect outputs to be driven by them. Should you give more attention to the underperformers or to the mid performers, if given that energy is probably finite for the day?
Yeah, I think that's a big problem, because the day comes and goes so quickly, and there's so many challenges, and just as soon as you fix one challenge, another challenge pops up. So it's exhausting, and you do end up leaning on a very small proportion of the team to get done everything that needs to get done, right? And so um, I don't have a good answer for that, except that it's so important to make sure that people recognize their value to the organization,
Mhm.
right? I will tell you that I do have a bias. There are only so many hours in the day, and there's only so much mind space in an executive, right? And you do have to be very conscious of these segments that you described, like low performer, medium performer, high performer. And, the idea of, well, let's just focus all our time and attention on that lowest performance band, that's not going to end very well. Right. So you just, I can't tell you the exact proportionality, but you have to understand that each of these segments requires time and attention, and they require different time and attention and different ways of extracting time and attention. And I think as a leader, as a manager, you just have to be very conscious of that and try to manage that part of your work life very conscientiously and very intentionally.
Thank you for those words, Peter, for the manao. All right. I think I hope that I could really, start to implement or do a lot of the things that you're sharing here. So many precious value bombs that you're sharing here. We talk about managing the energy. You did mention that different sectors, right? And be very careful labeling the high, the mid, the low. I'm taking that as part of the wisdom that you've shared, to manage the energy and to make sure that each sector require your attention and energy in different ways and in different levels. So I go back to energy. In Hawaii, there is a concept called mana, right? The
Anna.
energy. I mean, to me, for example, I am very biased towards energy, and I think energy is everything. But is it really everything? I mean, does a leader need to be energetic all the time? Can
I,
they get
you know,
tired? Can they
you get
complain?
tired. You get tired, and I will say that being a leader is a hard thing to do. I mean, we need to appreciate that. We need to celebrate that, really, I think. And I think it has to do. I would say that I believe that to be an exceptional leader requires Herculean energy. And I think that energy can only happen if you're not just managing your professional life well, but your home life has to be in a good place. Kind of what's between your two ears and what's in your heart and what's in your soul, that has to be in a good place. And if it's not, it's going to be very difficult to manage at the level that I think we would like to manage at from an energy standpoint. Because I absolutely believe that, I've already said, I think leadership is the determinant of success for any organization. And then therefore, well, you've got to pour a lot of energy into that. And that's a hard thing to do. And I really believe that, it's important for leaders to be taking care of themselves, both within the domain of their families, within the domain of themselves, and obviously within the domain of their organization.
Our breakthrough as a leader is not just systemic, right? The systems and the processes, but also personal, right? Herculean energy. That sounds
Mhm.
very massive and tiring, but we, I think, need to make sure we take care of our bodies, take care of our emotions, and mentally at home and in the office, so that we have enough to share to the people that we serve. Because, as you mentioned, Peter, we work not just with each other, but for each other. I love that. That's going to be my biggest takeaway for today, this morning. We have a question, Peter, from the Vice President of HR from a real estate company, Arthur Land. Lang, do you wanted to open your mic?
Hi, good morning.
Hi,
Thank you
hi,
for
Lang.
inviting us to join. I really love your view of leadership and this aloha culture that, it's so beautiful, empathy, collaboration, and harmony. But in a world where company systems are really built around KPIs, output, we're really rewarding outputs and really mm, most of the time, that's the highest percentage, not people, leadership, and behaviors. But of course, it's part of that. My question is, how should we redesign our performance management system to fully recognize compassion, collaboration, and community building as business strengths? These are qualitative metrics, but I do believe, of course, in human resource, these are the big things. These are the very important elements for a person, for a leader to truly perform and really a business to really perform.
Mhm.
So there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I spent um, the better part of 2 decades trying very hard to reposition our human resources function
Mhm,
from an administrative control function
mhm,
to a strategic value added function.
mhm,
So um, HR is a very important part of the organization from my perspective, and as you, I'm sure you are aware, a part of organizations that's changing pretty rapidly, right?
yes.
And so there's a lot of pressure there to begin with.
Mhm,
Um, your question really pulled at something that I'm very passionate about, which is how do you assess people, right?
mhm,
And the classic way of assessing people is a look back approach, right? So say, okay, well, it's your 1 year work anniversary, and here are the things that you did really well, um,
mhm,
and here are the things that I think you really need to focus on, right?
mhm.
And of course, the individual's not going to hear any of the things that they did really well. They're just going to dwell on the things that they've been told they need to focus on, right? And you say, okay, well, I hope this has been constructive for you. Good luck, right? Let us know how that's going to play out, right? And you know, oftentimes the individual's just kind of left with a bad feeling, right? They don't remember the nice things you said. They only remember the criticisms, right? And so I've always believed, and full disclosure, we did not actually accomplish this at my organization, but I thought, we should be able to flip this on its head and change the conversation to, oh, okay, um, Cherry, what do you want to accomplish in the next 12 months or 6 months, in the next 6 months that will really help you do what you want to get done in your position, or take your performance to another level, or or whatever, right? What specifically do you want to do, or what do you think you should be doing or could be doing to accomplish that? And let's have that discussion, right? And then let's date stamp that and say, okay, well, let's meet in 6 months to talk about how that's going, right? And that becomes an active conversation that is actionable, right? Versus a judgmental conversation. It's like, well, these are the 2 things you did great, and these are the 5 things that I think you really need to improve on. So I just think that the whole assessment system is just broken,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just not very humane.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really love that you're moving from transactional to being transformational. Not for the things that you have done in the past, but for what you can do and what are the aspirations that you have for yourself in the organization. So
Yeah, yeah.
really,
Because you're judging, you're having a conversation with somebody, and you're making a judgment on their performance that contributed to an outcome that
mm-hmm,
was a couple quarters ago in financial performance.
mm-hmm,
What's the purpose of that?
yeah,
What's that going to achieve? Let's focus on the future.
mm-hmm,
Like what can we do to help you get in position to do even better than you are?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Peter, I just want to say that you're giving us a lot here in terms of, something to reflect on, right, Leng, especially in the HR. First is that the assessment system is broken, right? But we keep on just, repeating and applying the template, and maybe there's really no time to reflect about it. So, if we have a time to pause and think about, how we could assess people more or help them to grow more. I also love what you just said, Peter, right? That you sit down with the person and not tell the person what they need to do, but ask the person what he or she wants to do to give more. Gives the power more to the person and not the leader, right? But we're so fast on, telling. We have leadership by telling, right? Tell them what we need to do. When as leaders, we also probably don't know enough, right? So I like the collaboration, the empowerment, the energy that probably, and it doesn't take that length, right? It doesn't take that we change the appraisal system. It just takes that we change the grammar and the words that we use and the
Yeah,
questions that we ask
yeah,
in a
yeah,
one-on-one that we can
yeah.
control.
Just
Yeah.
invert it. All you have to do is
Yeah.
invert it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Leng, you have any more questions?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Peter.
The
Cherry.
broken
Thank you.
appraisal system. So, something we could start looking into because that's a big word, broken, right? We need to fix it a little and make it a little bit more employee centric, I guess. Not all the time, what the company needs, but maybe what the employee can give is also important to what the company needs. And we don't know this until we ask the person in front of us how they could contribute better. Thank you for
Mhm.
those manao, so much manao in this room right now, Peter. Thank you so
I hope
much
you
for
keep.
that.
I hope you keep that word.
I will be keeping that word manao, which means wisdom. Wisdom coming from the inside, right?
That's great.
Thank you for that. 16 years of work, right, and service as CEO and chairman of the Bank of Hawaii. And over a month, you've retired. There are people here from Bank of Hawaii who also probably wanted to hear the answer to the next question. When you think about the people who worked under you, what do you hope, that they will carry forward as your legacy?
We've been talking about it for an hour. I think I hope that they carry forward the focus that I think we've had for a long time now on the individual, on the team, on really driving outcomes and performance through the lens of leadership, through the lens of how do we get our teams to perform better, because that really is the essence of performance from my perspective. And that requires a whole bunch of things to happen at the individual level, at the human level, at the personal level. That would be my biggest hope.
Mhm. Thank you so much for that. And I thought, that is so wise, so important, for us to remember people matter. People matter in this journey. To be Ohana or to feel aloha and to give aloha, right? To be a friend of the soul because everyone is actually a hero in his own journey. That's precious to me. Thank you for that. I have one last question, Peter, which I think, the people here in this room and the audience would benefit a lot from. And I want to talk about community, right? When you talk about Ohana and Aloha, and it just probably is not just about the workplace. It's all about the various relational fields we are all involved in, and we commit our energies to. Um, Service to the community, an organization, a business organization, for example, how do we, genuinely and not just make it part of a CSR or what, but genuinely integrate the business into the community so that there is also, service given to the community? How can we do that?
What we had was a group of people that we called the Blue Crew. So our corporate colors are blue and white. And so the Blue Crew had blue T-shirts that they would wear to events, and we had more than one community service project per week in any given week for many years. And so the important thing to me was we, as the Bank of Hawaii, our value is created based on our community's belief in our organization, in our people, in how we deal with people, how we treat people, how we service people. That really, when you get right down to it, that's the essence of trust, right? And that's what we're very good at. And in order for people to understand what that means in our organization, I always felt it was very important for people to understand how important the community was to us, right? And so it's one thing to say, we're a community-focused organization. It's another thing to have an event every week where 20, 30, 40 people from our organization on a Saturday on their personal time. We're out helping beautify some place or helping school children, or whatever it was, just being out in the community. And what we found, what I found, was that it really gave people the opportunity to give to the community in a personal way that they would not otherwise have. So we created that opportunity for them. Secondly, it helped them to understand what it is we're trying to convey to them without just talking to them about it. Like, they got to experience it, right? And then thirdly, and at a very junior level, it was about, the community seeing all these Bank of Hawaii employees on a Saturday morning cleaning something up with their blue T-shirts. And you might think that, that was everything, and like how many people saw them, and that was really what drove the value, which I think there's a small element to that. But really, more importantly, was how that message internalized in our staff, and just about everyone in the company does something at some point. And some people do something every weekend, people that have time to do that. But really, it's like how we use that as a lever to help the whole organization understand how important community is to us. And it's been very effective.
That sea of blue, right? The blue crew that
The Blue Crew.
symbolizes so much of the compassion and aloha of the Bank of Hawaii that you have started and that we wish, as a legacy to pass on, especially to the younger generation. I thought that's very precious. Peter, time is short. Is there anything you wanted to share to the people watching the show?
Your teachings are about leadership, and I think that is such a valuable space for everyone. And I would just say it's incredibly challenging and taxing and takes a lot of energy, but it is really the essence of great outcomes. And so I congratulate you on what you do, and wish you nothing but success, because I think this is a really important topic.
Thank you so much, Peter. You have blessed us with so much wisdom in this room. Aloha is not just a greeting of hello and a greeting of, goodbye. I believe that aloha is also a sharing of energy and spirit and love. And you have blessed this room with so much aloha. Ehana, kako, meke, aloha. I'm not sure if I said it right. To work
Oh my goodness,
together
that's fantastic.
right? To work together in respect and aloha. Thank you so much for sharing so much manao. I wanted to just end this by borrowing the famous line of Eckhart Tolle, who said that if the only prayer we have is thank you, then that is enough. Mahalo, Peter, and mahalo to everyone, to the community listening to you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone who joined us in Zoom. And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Cherry Africa Podcast. I hope you leave this conversation with something, a thought, a feeling, a question you hadn't asked yourself before. Remember, the best companies, the best leaders, the best humans, they all start with the same decision, to actually see the person in front of them. You have everything you need to be that person. Behave better, think stronger, feel with empathy. Godspeed, and always be awesome.